Good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, the 28th of June, 2021. Welcome back to another quick garden tour. We'll start briefly in the orchard, taking a look at some things that are ripe. We're dealing with either a lot of rain or a chainsaw, so take your pick today. The Eubanks cherries are ripe. I tasted them. They tasted pretty darn good. I got to get them before things like this happen. Otherwise, 99.9% of them are good. I'm just going to wait for the rest of the day. I got somebody coming over just to admire the garden, and then I'll probably pick them. Check out some of these Mac apples. Isn't that beautiful? I don't think I'll get more than a handful off this tree, but that's okay. If everything goes well, next year we'll have a great big harvest like the peach tree. The Reliance peach, that is, which is completely loaded. We had our June drop, a bunch fell, and these have held on. So I'm just trusting that nature can support this. You see the limbs are a little bit weighed down, but I think they'll be fine. Take a wide look at the garden from just outside the fence. Isn't that beautiful? The front row here, these Mexican sunflowers are just taller than the fence, putting them at, 3.5 feet, lots of flowers opening. And behind that, the cabbages are great big. I don't have any heads that are forming, but they're nice and healthy. As we step into the garden and look down, we can see the squash and the pumpkins are crawling along quite nicely. In fact, it looks like we're about to get some flower heads. Speaking of flowers, here we've got our butterfly weed. We've got these pretty purple things, and some of these early sunflowers that are climbing up are opening. Isn't that lovely? Over the last 2-3 days, we've gotten just about 3 inches of rain. The ground cherries look beautiful. This is how they should look. Maybe a little bit bushier this time of year, but I'm certain that they're going to produce. We're already starting to get flowers and little husks. Some of the tomatoes are really tall. That one there is pushing 4 feet. For a moment, we'll step into the peas. You can see here that many of the beans, not peas, sorry. You can see that many of the beans are taller than me. I'm 6'5". They're climbing up very nicely on both ends. Right? Look through the spider web and you can see them growing nice and tall. Take a look at this wild looking bed. Does it look like a mess? Maybe, but it's actually very controlled. All the flowers are closing up, and we've got, I thought we had some pods forming. Well, these will form radish pods really quickly. Then I'll harvest them, and then I'll pull them out of the ground to make way for all the zinnias, the seeds that we planted. A lot of them germinated, which is terrific. It's just what we want. So as these are growing up, we'll be able to pull out these old radishes and cycle this garden through. These are the early potatoes. They're growing nicely. They never did fill in the middle. This is just what, lamb's ear? No, that's not right. It's a weed for me. I know it's edible. And the peas are doing well. I'm constantly harvesting these. The more you harvest them, the better they grow. Peas here to scale. I always like reference. This is why I do vertical gardening. They just go up and up and up, and you can grow so much more in, a small amount of space. The strawberry asparagus bed now is effectively just done for the season, don't you know? And what I need to do, and I told my neighbor, is, dig out these runners and transplant. Now is the time to share or fill in your space if you need to. I don't need to fill in, I need to share. Take out these late potatoes. These are beautifully full. I'm growing in a lot of nice compost. Here are the beets. They are edging each other out. Little competition. This is the first year that I didn't thin them out based off of some comments that, they'll push each other out and compete. So we'll see what happens. More peas, don't you know? 'Tis the time for peas. Cilantro's going to bolt, which is fine. These will all just fall in and reseed for later in the season. I've made a couple recipes recently this past week. You just pick out the stuff that you need, and it's still good. Ditto for the basil. Really, not bolting at all. I'm amazed. Growing these in the shade has been the best decision I've made. Check out the dill. Catnip, got to give to my mom's cats. Rosemary, not rosemary, this is lavender. It's effectively filling out the barrel, which I think is amazing. So the zucchinis aren't really doing much vertical growth, but they are growing. You see we got a couple on this plant. And there are flowers over here. Whether they set or not is a different thing, but I have yet, fingers crossed, to see squash bugs. And that is historically a big problem for me. Jerusalem artichokes really didn't grow much this past week. I'm kind of surprised. I was expecting them to be up to my head. Over in the barrels, things look good. Chard to use, kale to use. Haven't made a recipe in a couple weeks. Nothing else to say about the mint. The peppers over here coming in nicely. They're growing well. They sure like the rain. Just gotta feed them up through my trellis. Same over here. Looks like I got a little bit of weeding to do, but the peppers themselves are doing fine. And I've got some probably morning glories or whatever vining up, filling in the space, but it's pretty. Speaking of pretty, this is kind of a compost pile for me, but I've got tiger lilies going crazy over there. They're closed now because of the rain, but it's a beautiful sight to see. This is the time for the early raspberry harvest. I can get out here today and pick a couple of quarts of these, my regular ones, and of these, my black jewels. Regular on the right, black jewel on the left, both tasty in their own right. I believe that my red currants are done ripening. They should be based off of what I'm reading online. So I am going to pick these probably this week, at least the large clusters. It's good times in my garden. What do you think, guys? How are things going for you? I got lots of rain and a decent amount of heat, so the garden loves it. Hope you're having a good growing season. Good luck next month in July. Happy Independence Weekend to anybody in the States. If you like this, you know what to do. Until next week, happy gardening. Bye, guys.